what goes on in our minds, in our headspace, has a direct influence on how healthy we are. Our brain is such a powerful tool that we have.
Get your daily dose of motivation on the Motivational Moments with Michelle podcast. In Motivation with Michelle podcast, you'll get encouraging, uplifting, and life-changing wisdom that will transform your world at your fingertips, 24-hour a day. Get a fuller, deeper revelation of the tools you can implement to see incredible transformation in your life from Michelle Newstedter's powerful teachings. Tune in whenever you need to be edified, uplifted, or a dose of motivation, no matter where you are. Subscribe to Motivational Moments with Michelle podcast with Michelle Newstedter today on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or SoundCloud.
Hey there, and welcome to this Wednesday Word of Wisdom. My name is Michelle Newstedter, and I am your host today. And the message that I'm bringing to you comes at a really timely time, I find. Bell, Let's Talk. Their day for mental health awareness is next week, next Wednesday. And I'll be putting out a Wednesday Word of Wisdom for that next week. But I wanted to make everybody just aware because our mental health is so important. It's so critical to our physical health, to how we experience our world. There's so many things that are tied to our mental health. And it's really interesting because it seems like over the last few days, I've had to do a lot of talking to people around positivity and shifting our headspace. And there's this mindset around think yourself healthy. So, can you? See, nobody likes being sick, right? Everybody hates being sick. I know I hate being sick. But it almost seems like we have a pretty effective weapon that can actually reduce our chances of getting sick. And that's being happy. Now, there was a study actually that was published. It was back in 2003, where they took 300 people who voluntarily allowed themselves to be infected with a virus that's responsible for the common cold. And then they were just monitored for the symptoms. And the results came back, and what they noticed was the people who had the more positive mindsets were 3 times less likely to develop cold symptoms than those participants who were more negative minded, more pessimistic, less happy overall. And the thing is that we have more control than we give ourselves credit for. See, we can't necessarily control the stream of thoughts that pop into our head, but what we choose to do with them when they do come, that is completely up to us. Having a more positive mindset, mental attitude has long-term benefits for us as well. Because there was another study that was done, and it had showed that people who tend to have a more positive mindset, or people who were more happier, tended to live 7 to 10 years longer than those who weren't. Now, this hasn't changed anything in the health field, right? It's not like doctors are gonna prescribe you, go and laugh. Albeit, I don't necessarily think that would be a bad prescription for you. But there is some validity and research that is starting to show that what goes on in our minds, in our headspace, has a direct influence on how healthy we are. Our brain is such a powerful tool that we have. And stress, there's a reason why they say stress kills, right? Because when we have those stressful thoughts, when we're thinking in terms of anxiety provoking thinking and mindsets, when we're looking at things always glass half empty, our brain is constantly dripping all those like stress hormones into our system. Drip, 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 drip. This constant drip of stress hormones into our system. And they break down muscle, tissue, organs. They break down our immune system. So we're more likely to get sick when we're really stressed. And so many of the chronic illnesses that we have in our world today come from stress. They are stress induced. Things like fibromyalgia and, lupus can be onset by stress, and MS. Part of the controlling of MS symptoms is reducing stress levels. So many of the chronic illnesses that we have in our world come from stress. And that's sad. And not only that, our thoughts can even help us cure ourselves of some things. See, because the opposite is also true, right? When we are in that more positive mindset, when we're more optimistic, when we're more happy, when we look for the positive and the good things around us, when we find ourselves in that like place of peace, when we can be mindful and intentional and in the moment, our brain releases more of the serotonin, the dopamine, the norepinephrine, things like that actually help to regenerate the system, that help to build those broken down pieces back up in our body. We've discovered too that the people who are the most optimistic have roughly 15% longer lifespans than people who are less optimistic. People with higher levels of positive emotions do better at managing their stress. They're spending more time being intentional. They do things like take better care of themselves because they're happy. And not only do we want to look for good things. I've talked before about being grateful and that kind of stuff. And we need to spend some time looking for the good things that are right here, right around us all the time. But we also need to attach that positive emotion to those things. Recalling a happy memory that's attached to that, or we want to let ourselves kind of sit in and dwell in that neutral, positive, stress-free place for just a moment, whether that's laying in my bed and I'm all snuggled in my blankets and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so comfy and so warm and I just love it, to finding a beam of light that's dancing on the floor. Or in the morning for myself, I love to just sit with my hot cup of coffee and hold it and feel it and smell it. I'm going to drink it too, but it's just that being in that moment and allowing myself to kind of just revel in that space. It allows me to be at peace and find some joy as I'm kicking my day off, right? Now, it always boils down to the billion-dollar question of how much control do we have over our mindset anyway? But whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.